One conversation, three perspectives, honest debate on the stories shaping the travel industry.
Each episode tackles a live issue, big trend, or hot debate from across the travel industry.
Every week, we'll be joined by guests for honest conversations, strong opinions, and lively debate.
I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
I'm James. Welcome to Let's Talk Travel. Two of the biggest names in UK travel are rewriting their own rulebooks right now. TUI just launched a stripped-back OTA brand that quietly bypasses the very agents that built its business. And easyJet is on the brink of leaving the stock market entirely in a £5.7 billion private equity deal. And that's got more strings attached than the headline suggests. Is this the future of travel retail, or a gamble neither company can fully control? Welcome to Let's Talk Travel. Well, welcome back, guys. A few holidays I see. So what have you been up to? How was the Caucasian?
The Caucasian was fantastic, actually. Yeah, we didn't get above 25, I would say, over the time I was there. Lots of sunshine, lots of very pleasant weather. So Caucasians definitely won a place in my heart for sure.
And Will, I hear you learned to surf.
No. Let's be totally clear. I had a surfing lesson. I did not learn to surf. I got up momentarily and got down very quickly shortly after that. But it was a good workout, lots of fun, and it turns out my teenage kids absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, I think you did better than probably what I would have done. I don't know if you, Andy, are you a master surfer in your spare time?
I have. I've done one lesson once with work about 15, 20 years ago, and it was the most horrible experience of any team building we've ever done, I think. So, no, I'm not a master surfer at all. And I would be very much like Will, I think, falling off regularly.
Yeah, don't start old.
Yeah.
Well, on the subject of holidays, today's episode, we're talking about the two of the biggest tour ops here in the UK, and they're in the news again for different reason. First up, we're digging into TUI's surprise move into the OTA market with its new direct sell brand Sundeals, which, to be fair, does sound like a name out of maybe the 90s for a tour operator. But what it is and why they've done it and whether agents should be worried. And then we're going to split and go into the second half. We're going to talk about our big orange friends, easyJet, because we're going to get the latest into the takeover saga, Apollo's $5.7 billion deal, why it's not quite done yet. And they're saying already March 2027, I think, for a completion they want to aim for. But what could it mean for the airline, staff, and the wider market? So we can get into that. But before, let's talk about all things TUI, with their little smile. So, Sundeals. And for anyone who's missed it, TUI Group quietly launched this brand new direct-to-consumer digital platform in the UK. It's not TUI branded. It's not First Choice branded. It's completely standalone. They've called it Sundeals. Will, why don't you talk us through what it actually is?
Yeah, well, like you, I'm not entirely sure about the name. But anyway, moving past that, as you say, it launched at the end of July, and it's essentially a dynamic packaging platform. So that's flights plus hotels, direct to consumer, no agents. They've got access to over 20,000 hotels across 100 destinations. And the core markets are the usual sort of Mediterranean hotspots. So Spain, Greece, Turkey. And they've gone really aggressive with price. So we're talking lead-in packages from, I think it's $290 per person for Greece, I saw, $300 for Turkey, and a little bit more for Spain. So they're going in hard, and they're trying to take some market share.
And so we've looked at the site, and let's be honest, they don't clearly promote their ATOL number or license. They say they're ATOL protected. You have to do a bit of scrolling to the bottom to find the small ATOL license, smaller than a 5p coin. But there is a number there, and you can see they're being protected by the German business, a subsidiary of the German license. There's no ABTA logo, but we've talked about that on another episode. You should check it out. But Andy, where's all this inventory coming from? Are they just being basically this aggregator now?
It would appear that way, yeah. I think they're trying to compete with others in the OTA market, and clearly TUI is a very reputable and very valuable brand, and they don't want to damage that. So I guess from an internal point of view, you've got a lot of inventory, you've got a lot of connections to data, you've got lots of APIs, perhaps access to things that other people don't. And so therefore it's a good opportunity to try and rebadge that in a very competitive way, outside of the TUI brand, against, you know, the On the Beaches or the Love Holidays, other people that have done fantastically well over the last decade or two, and try and win some of that sort of different audience, perhaps, I don't know. So they've got the infrastructure, try and rebadge it, reuse it in a different way, which I guess is, you know, part of this whole offer, albeit in a name we're not so sure about.
Right. And when you look at the website, for those who haven't done it yet, do check it out. It's very much a carbon copy of probably two of the most aggressive OTAs in the market, On the Beach and Love Holidays. I think they've said, well, this is the blueprint. Let's try to copy it and maybe improve upon it if they can. And the thing is, what I noticed when I had a play around with the site is, to your point, the prices are incredibly low. They're very, very aggressive. We're talking far lower than the TUI standard kind of pricing model. So what do you think this means for us, Will?
Deal. I
Do
think
they?
I think what it summarizes is what we've talked about before, which is we're now in a complete deal economy. We've spoken about lates in an episode before. We've spoken about, you know, the land grab in terms of, you know, people putting out prices in the future for various different things. And now we've got a new player, in inverted commas, being ultra aggressive in terms of what they're doing. I actually can see why they're doing it. I understand it. I think they've probably, if you look at TUI as an organization, huge resources, you know, they've historically had this sort of tour operator model. I think it's probably a natural step in terms of doing it, especially, you know, as technology improves, they can connect all their inventory together. But you've got to be aggressive with price to make a bit of a splash. One of the things you mentioned was it's not TUI branded, which is quite an interesting play in all of this.
And there's no price promise on there to say they'll match TUI. They're very much aimed at trying to separate the two brands, because, as we know, a loyal customer to TUI, I'm sure if they rang up and found a price being reduced in the future or on another OTA website, there'll be some form of loyalty program there where they try to reward them, match them, and so on. This is a very different approach they're going here. This is the aggressive OTA model, like an On the Beach, like a Love Holidays. We want to be lowest, we want to be cheapest, we want to be there. But does that mean then they have to change their marketing model, Andy? Because this isn't a TUI approach where you have these lovely adverts with a teddy bear or something else. You know, this is now an aggressive OTA.
We say an aggressive OTA. I mean, they've been live for about a month, so realistically, what dent are they going to make in the market?
Not even.
Yeah. I think they will have to be aggressive on price, and whether the word then gets out or not, I don't know. But from a marketing perspective, they're going to have to, I guess, rely on the old channels of Google search, perhaps some general PPC ads, perhaps some meta ads. And it might have been a great idea to start something like this 3, 5, 8 years ago, but prices of ads on Google are only going up. Google's making record profits quarter after quarter. And I can imagine some of the competitiveness on their price means their margins must be wafer thin anyway, just selling the product. So getting people onto the site and then trying to sell, buy a product, having paid £6, £8 for a click on a brand they've never seen before, has no connection to TUI. Do I trust this or not? I think the first 6 months of this is going to be very, very expensive for them to test and market. You could easily see this fold in 12 months' time because the model now has become so inefficient or so hard to manage. And, you know, people like Love Holidays On the Beach, you know, they are household names. They've even gone with their TV ads. If this is a new brand that has nothing to shout about apart from price, then it is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of data and a lot of push to get people to recognize it. And I think that's the marketing challenge for them, is realistically, if you're not getting involved the trade and you're not going to lean on the TUI brand, you've got a heck of a job on your hands to try and make this work, because price alone is not necessarily going to cut it when everything is getting squeezed all over the place. So I don't think this is an established player just yet. We have to wait and see how it works out.
I've got a question for both of you then, and well, it's two questions really, but one is, don't you think they've got the infrastructure in place already? So the margins aren't quite so important from day one. So they can be aggressive with price, they make a name for themselves. And then I guess it's almost counter to that question, but why not go with the TUI brand? Why not include that? Because that would give you an automatic sort of leapfrog into this.
Well, I mean, you could use a TUI brand. The TUI name is there on the website, so anyone that does any type of diligence will see that. It's just the promotional side. And then I guess before, as I said at the beginning, like TUI is one of the biggest names in the country, one of the biggest names in Europe, one of the biggest travel companies in the world, or certainly in these shores. So why would you want to risk that when you could probably be eating your own margin by being too overt? And I guess that's why they've started in this way. Perhaps in time, everything does become too expensive. People land on this website from a Google PPC ad, having paid £3.50. No one clicks, no one buys, despite the price. Or maybe they sort of leave it there and they just turn it on in peaks and turn it on in the late market, and throughout the rest of the year they don't do much. I think they've got lots of different ways they could play it, and maybe starting off in this way means they've got options. Whereas if they'd gone out with the TUI name from day one, the trade would have been annoyed. There'd been a huge amount of press in the national papers, perhaps. And so therefore, they run a big risk. I think starting this way is the wise choice, and we have to see how it pans out.
So my take is, we know that Kevin Nielsen, the MD of First Choice, is looking after this business. We know that Andy Stern, the head of sales and marketing at First Choice, is also covering the business. So their top costs within the business, within the personnel and staffing, is probably relatively low, because you've got two people who are doing this as a side project for their other job. Potentially, what is it? Is it TUI testing the market out and seeing if maybe in the future First Choice might be run down and this will be the model that replaces it? Are they using it as an opportunity to really see how successful these OTAs are in this market, how much they have to invest and cost and test? So are they looking at it as a bit of a guinea pig? And look, if it fails in 12 months, to Andy's point, have they damaged TUI? No, because it's been run as a very separate business. You flip this model into a TUI business, everyone's watching you. And if it fails, that is front page news, isn't it? So I think my gut feel is this is a bit of a test and learn from them. They probably owned Sundeals as one of their brands they registered many years ago, hence why it sounds like a 90s tour operator. And I imagine they've pulled it out, they've got the domain, and they've said, hey, let's put a bit of budget behind it. Boys, you can do this as a side project, see what you can make work.
And I'd maybe just add to that, Will touched on the technology. I think one of the things that has helped the likes of On the Beach and Love Holidays win in the last decade is just their focus on data, their focus on technology, building it in-house, bringing whatever they can from outside, making it all work seamlessly for the end traveller, and offering a good price on the back of that. TUI, they are one of the, as I say, biggest travel companies out there. So they have access to the best development, the best data, the best resources, the best analytics. This is as a trial. Like we work with some clients that want to get into this type of space, and it's very hard, it's very complicated. And unless your technology is at the absolute peak, then you are going to be really struggling. And I think that's where competitively this could work, because they have all of the toys and they can play around with all of them and really drive some significant data to test things quite quickly. And I'm sure within 3-6 months they're going to see it work, or not.
So crazy prediction. They play with it for a year, 12 months time. They relaunch with big fanfare, TUI OTA. You heard it here first. Come on.
No, I can't see that. I can't see that happening, because the TUI brand is too priceless and too valuable for them, particularly in the European markets and in Germany, which is, it's like a household brand more than the UK. TUI is enormous in Germany. My gut feel, though, is they've made reference that the purpose of Sundeals is potentially, more pitched at cutting through the clutter for more confident, digitally savvy deal hunters. In other words, a younger generation. They are going after the younger market who book on these OTAs like Love Holidays, like On the Beach. And it's their way to say, look, this part of the market is potentially diminishing for us. Let's go after the growing captive market, where someone sees a deal online, they make a very quick, decisive decision, and it's booked within X many period of time. So my take is that.
I would go a little bit further and probably extend that. And I use the analogy of like supermarkets. If you say Tesco in the UK is the biggest supermarket out there, right? And they've got the biggest loyalty scheme with their Tesco points, and everything you go and you look in the store, everything's marked up. And then with your club card, you get a super discount price. TUI have launched the Smiles Club. So the idea, I guess, is that if you're a Smiles Club member, then you're going to get a discount and you're going to feel, oh, I won, great. But what do we know about the UK supermarkets in the last 5 years? You've had Aldi and Lidl come and be the biggest. They don't have loyalty. They don't have anything fancy. It's like you get your product, it's cheap. You go in there, you get it, you come out again. And I guess from a positioning point of view, they're doing sun deals as a sort of a Lidl alternative to the Tesco or something more upmarket. And we know that that's grown fantastically. So I think, in a world where we're all more price sensitive, we all want a last minute deal, I think this could really pay off. But as I say, it's very hard to get off the ground if you're not leaning on something. I think that's the challenge.
I think my concern there, though, Andy, as well, is if you're not leaning on something, they have publicly come out and said that they're not really investing a lot of time or money into this. So there was a 90-10 split in terms of the TUI brand gets 90% and Sun Deals gets 10%. You've got these two guys from First Choice who are working part-time on this. We all know from running businesses ourselves, if you give a little bit of your time to something else, you're taking your eye off the main thing that you're running, and you're not investing proper time in either, and there is the potential that both ultimately slip. And that's why I kind of question this and where it is. I think there wasn't. I think it's probably the right thing. I think it's the right thing for the TUI group, but I think I probably would have made a little bit more commitment.
Yeah, I think you need people in place that need to make it work, or you separate it somehow. Because as you say, like you risk doing neither thing very well. So I think they're going to have to maybe work on that internally. I suspect.
We've also got to remember that TUI has quite a fractious relationship already with the trade through the history of commission levels and the way they've worked with the trade. And Sun Deals has been very clear and said it won't be sold through the trade. This is purely focused on a direct B2C consumer purchase. Neil Swanson, TUI's UK and Ireland MD, was very explicit about that. He said it's an OTA proposition. It won't be available for independent agents to sell. But he was also keen to reassure agents that don't worry, you're still our friend. We still love you here at TUI. So, when you don't go down rewarding to agents, there's a lot of costs involved with the commissions and supporting the agents, but they are really trying to keep this one kept to the side and says, this is an independent OTA in my eyes. We want to see how it flies. That's my take.
I agree. I do agree. And I think it's probably sensible, but that's where I would have gone for clearer church and state. I would have gone for clearer leadership for both of them. I wouldn't have merged them, because that's where it does get a little bit dicey for the agents, because they go, well, hold on a minute. You're serving this business, but you're also serving that business. Oh, yeah, but I'm only doing it part-time. Well, yeah, but you're still doing it. You're still thinking that way. You're still thinking about being a competitor to me, even if 90% of your time you're actually serving me. So that's where I think there is confusion and where I worry a little bit for this.
Okay, before we move on to easyJet, quick question for you both. Let's first talk about TUI. One question for the trade. Is it good, bad, or is it indifferent to you? Will, good or bad for the trade, or are you sat on the fence?
I'm going to sit on the fence. It's confusing at the moment.
Right. Andy?
I don't think it makes any difference to the trade whatsoever. TUI's going to carry on its relationships. People are going to still buy through agents. I don't think it makes any difference at this point.
Okay, now for the consumer, I'll go straight back to you, Andy. Is it good, bad? Is it indifferent? Is it just another OTA in the market? What's your take?
I think it could be great for the consumer. If they really are hitting the price that hard, fantastic. It's another option to go and buy an amazing deal, which is dynamically packaged. It's not a TUI product, is it? We've said this, and it's quite a clear distinction. So then it's, can they love holidays in terms of price and other things? I think they probably could. So I've just come back from holiday. I'm now thinking about next year's holiday, and I'm certainly going to scan around on the site and go, yeah, bloody hell, this is a great place to go and get something. So I think it could be great for consumers for sure. Yeah.
Will, same question.
Deals, baby. That is where the market is right now. That's what we've discussed. This is another website, another business that's offering deals. So from a consumer's perspective, it's playing right into their hands.
And final take, to your point earlier on, Andy, do you think it's going to be here in 12 months' time?
If I'm going to be as harsh as I can, I'm going to say no. Why? Acquisition costs are going up year on year online, and that's not going to change in 2027, I can assure you. Secondly, this is part of a gigantic machine. And if you've got people doing part-time jobs, even in a small company, as I know and you know, it is hard. So getting the resource, getting the buy-in for something that's going to make a loss in year one, probably not have much traction in the market. I could easily see this falling on its face. And in 12 months' time, it's like, well, what were they doing? What a stupid idea. So I'm going to say, no, it doesn't work.
Will?
It's going to work. This is the embryo of something bigger. They are testing the ground. The Sundeal brand will go. There'll be a brand new leadership team. There'll be a massive investment once they've tested the market. And in 12 months' time, this will be a new TUI play with a lot of weight behind it.
Yeah. My secret suspicion is this could end up being first choice, because you've got the MD running it anyway, the marketing team running it. This could be the evolution of first choice. First choice at the moment is used in a slightly different fashion. It's predominantly aimed at the younger market anyway. This could be the transition for the business. But that is our crystal ball. We do not know. Maybe we need to revisit this one, like we're going to revisit another one of the topics we've talked about, which is our orange friends, easyJet. So moving into part 2, one of the most recognizable names in European aviation, as we know, is heading toward private ownership. So Will, can you remember and remind us, what was the latest? What happened?
Well, our crystal ball wasn't very good when we spoke about this previously. Let's be entirely honest. And actually, previously, there was one suitor. So we were talking about a US investment fund called Castle Lake buying out easyJet previously. They were then sort of overtaken by Apollo. I think both parties were then asked for their final offer, and Apollo have had their offer accepted pending the various different things that these kind of deals have to go through to make it happen. So it's quite interesting. I'm particularly interested in the structure because obviously it can't be owned, a European aviation company can't be owned by a US company. So I think Apollo actually only are buying 49%. The family are keeping 15%. And then there's a trust that makes up the rest. So it's very interesting. And it does demonstrate that our crystal ball isn't right if it goes through.
Yeah, so this one's interesting because when we all talked about it, I agree, we all said it wasn't going to happen. I think I actually said, I feel this is easyJet showing a little bit of leg to try to attempt to purchase in. So maybe it has happened. Apollo have come in, £7.15 a share is quite impressive, and it was definitely going to get easyJet's attention. And look, this is going to make a lot of people very wealthy in easyJet. It was interesting that Stelios did come out and say his family are going to continue on the journey. They want to be supportive. They want to ensure that everything is protected. But I think we touched on this before, and Andy, you will remember that he still owns the rights, doesn't he, to the brand?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, this is what I think why I was a bit skeptical about it all, knowing that it was his original baby. It's been easy XYZ for the last 20, 30 years. This was the thing that started it all. So I always felt like there was going to be a bit of a not wanting to, say goodbye to your first child almost. So I think he is going to hold something like 15% of the company. Or they hold that at the moment, and it's going to be quite tricky for them to, I guess, have a structure that works for him and the new buyer and the EU courts as well, because I think there's 3 parties all involved here that need to be happy. So we're talking about this like this done deal. I still think it's quite a bit of a way to go, personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulation and red tape, isn't there, Will?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not a done deal. The board has recommended it, but it's not deal complete. There's shareholder vote, court sanction. There'll obviously be the invariable, competition and mergers committee and everything on that. And then obviously, as I said before, there's the whole aviation ownership and control rules. I assume they've done their due diligence and they've checked out that, Stelios' family owning 15% and then having this trust will be compliant with all of that, but who knows?
And do you think, we talked about this, if this happened, would this be a good thing or a bad thing for the industry, or we said ugly at the time? Is everyone's take different now, or do we all still feel the same way? Andy?
I mean, as the numbers start to become real and the money becomes solid, I do start to worry a bit more about what this might mean for the average traveller. If you have a big corporation holding the purse strings, they're going to be looking to tighten up perhaps a bit more than Stelios, who's still quite actively involved with. He may have favourite routes, he may have favourite things that they, probably cost them money every year. And if someone else comes in and takes control of the wheel, then you could see routes being cut. Perhaps I think Michael O'Leary's been quoted as saying that he can see, with that money being paid, they're going to have to just be more profitable, which might mean routes cut, might mean less flights, might mean prices going up. So as this becomes more real, I do start to get a little bit worried for what it might mean for certain regional airports or certain routes, because I could definitely see them being under a lot of pressure. As we just talked about earlier on, everyone wants deals, right? So if easyJet are putting some of their prices up, it may mean we've got less opportunity to get the bargains or pay a bit more of a premium as we go through.
And if Michael O'Leary's saying it, it must be true, and it couldn't just be a news story and everything else on this basis. I think the interesting thing for me is when we were talking about Castle Lake originally, and actually the news of the Apollo deal came in when we were recording with Timothy O'Neill Dunn, James. I don't know if you remember. And one of the things that he said is, this is actually a good thing. Castle Lake he saw as being the kind of investment that would actually split up easyJet, split out the holiday, and sort of sell off the parts. But he actually was very positive. I don't know if he still is. I need to follow up with him, but we should probably get him back on. But that Apollo would actually drive the brand forward, and it would actually push the whole sort of entity forwards and really look to maximize that. I share Andy's concerns a little bit in terms of, the need to, maximize things. Any investor is going to want a return on their investment. But I actually think this will put them in a really strong position. And actually, I wonder if they'd be a little bit more aggressive. They've got some money behind them now. Will they actually explore different routes? Will they refine the model to actually go, and maybe it was the land grab episode we spoke about where we were comparing the likes of easyJet holidays, running 4 flights a day to Malaga, and BA holidays were only running 2. Do they actually streamline that, and do they actually invest in new routes and expanding that side of things? I think it could be a really interesting play.
So the public message has been fairly conservative. Apollo has indicated it supports easyJet's existing strategy. It's committed to retaining the UK and EU headquarters. Let's be honest, they have to do that. easyJet's CEO Kenton Jarvis described Apollo as a partner who could help accelerate the existing growth plans rather than tear them up. Priorities are going to be speeding up the fleet to gauge into larger aircraft, growing ancillary and loyalty revenue, and expanding their holidays business, which we know is ripe to do because they've got the flight stock, and it is purely about how much they push that. One of the things that did come out in the press, for those of you who didn't see it, was they mentioned that staff would be protected for a minimum of 12 months. Now that always sets a few alarm bells off to me, because yes, they're committed to protecting staff for 12 months, but as any partner, when they come in and they do an investment, they are also looking for where they can save money. Thoughts?
Well, the unions have already been vocal, haven't they? I think Unite came out. Was it their General Secretary Sharon Graham came out, and no union is going to be happy to hear that kind of rhetoric. Protecting jobs for 12 months means worry about month 13 and what that might look like after that. So, yeah, to your point, it's what you would expect in a deal like this. And that will be obviously very sad for the people involved. I still think it's going to be a good thing overall in terms of for the for the whole business and driving that forwards, and actually having easyJet, be it the airline or the holidays, in the market, and what they can actually do for the market.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, any takeover is going to involve some restructuring at some point. Some people may lose their jobs, but I mean, they run a pretty lean operation from what I understand and what I would assume. So where do you take 20-30% of your staff costs out? I mean, it's going to be different routes perhaps, which, as I said before, like there's only going to be so much they can chop out to make it more profitable. It's very safety orientated flying at airlines. So I can't see they've got lots of wiggle room. I would be thinking more aggressively about, well, perhaps how do you grow this thing rather than try and cut the costs? And I think that's what Will said. So we need to be wary, but I think there's some reasons to be cheerful.
I wonder though, Andy, whether you look at some of the infrastructure things and you actually go, you probably can streamline costs through the use of bigger aircraft. It actually only takes the same amount of pilots, the same amount of cabin crew. I mean, I assume there's, and I don't know, but I assume there's a certain amount you have to have. But there is economies of scale to those bigger planes. So on certain routes, to what James was saying before, by investing in new aircraft, more efficient, bigger aircraft, there is that propensity to actually grow within the same staffing or reducing staffing slightly. And again, I'm sorry to keep coming back to Timothy, but it is that whole infrastructure debate and what they can actually do.
Yeah, I was going to come back to. I mean, Timothy, if you've not heard that episode already and you're listening to this, please do get involved in that, because he goes into quite a lot of detail and lots of reasons why the infrastructure thing is so important. And perhaps with this investment, they are looking over a 10-year horizon, and they're thinking, if we buy these new planes, we've got bigger infrastructure, more capacity, we've got the same amount of headcount. If we can add 20-30% more on the capacity and put the price up a bit over the next 5-10 years, A, jobs are secure, B, we've got opportunity to grow revenue, C, new destinations as well. So, from that perspective, if you can sort that bit, I mean, there's a long lead time, I believe, isn't there? I think, again, Timothy delved into that, but there's lots of reasons why this could work out fantastically well for everyone.
I think the biggest advantage they've got on paper when they sold that business was the easyJet holidays business is still such a small part of the overall revenue stream. And unlike the competitor of, say, Jet2 holidays, which isn't fully open or expanded into international European markets, the plane has to come back technically empty. They're still running it very much like a charter program. Yes, they run a flight-only business, so they'll be able to fill some of those seats. But easyJet are selling point to point. They're selling holidays to other different destinations. Now, that's already started to expand across Europe, predominantly in Germany. So they've got the two biggest ones who are very familiar with this OTA online holiday model, the UK and Germany. Others will follow, particularly the Eastern European destinations. So I think with easyJet, you can imagine sat there in a boardroom when they're pitching this business and they're showing all this low-hanging fruit with this holidays business and saying, if you supercharge us, we'll be able to return massive amounts, because now all the money is staying with us. People aren't using us just for a flight. They're using us for a holiday. And that's what we want. We want full end-to-end control.
But doesn't that come back to infrastructure again? If you've got that growth ability within the business, which they have, it's not going to take that much more of a headcount to actually achieve that, especially with the advancements of technology and some of the things obviously we just talked about in the whole Sundeals thing. You can see where there is opportunity for that growth within the existing operation.
Yeah. Andy, any more to add?
No, I've just realised I've sort of started off thinking there's lots of things could be cut, and I've sort of now gone around the house a bit to say, actually, if they've got the investment and the right mindset, this could easily grow. So I'm still not 100% sure how this is going to pan out. It all depends on how aggressive they want to be with their investments, and then what time scale they're going to look at trying to get their money back. But it could work out fantastically well in terms of the consumer over the next 5 years, or you could see a lot of things cut. I'm still not 100% sure how it's going to pan out.
I think the reinforcing thing for me is probably the fact that, Stelios's, and I can't pronounce his surname, so I'm not going to try, but Stelios's family is still involved and still going to maintain that share ownership, because I don't believe he would have been sold a plan. Now, okay, that plan may change, but he will have been sold a plan, and he's got a significant enough holding that, they will have had to be convinced of what the future looks like. And I don't think they would continue to be involved and put their name to it if they weren't sure of what that future looks like. And I think that should send out really good signals to easyJet employees, easyJet customers, and what the future of easyJet looks like, because I truly believe that is kind of the soul and the bread and butter that will take them forwards.
So crystal ball moment again, guys. Quick answer: is the deal going to happen? Yes or no? Andy, is it going to happen?
If you can get through the regulation bit, then yes. But otherwise, I think you're going to have a hard time.
Will?
There'll be delays because of the regulators, but yes, it's going to happen.
I also agree. I think it will happen, but I have a feeling there's going to be some twists and turns when it comes to the regulatory challenges, particularly from the industry as well. I think people are really going to want to see how this is split out and being run in the European Union still. So let's watch this space. And again, maybe we'll need to revisit this one.
Thanks to our sponsor, Travelzoo, the club for travel enthusiasts. Join Travelzoo today for hand-picked deals exclusively for members.
So we've got TUI tested the waters with a low-cost direct brand whilst telling the trade, don't worry, business as usual. And we've got easyJet heading towards private ownership via a deal that's agreed in principle, but still has a few hurdles to jump, should we say. Two very different stories, but both very, very interesting ones for us to talk about today. Guys, it's always a pleasure. Thanks as ever to you both. And to all of our listeners, please like, follow, subscribe, share, send a postcard to your friends, tell everyone about our podcast, leave us a review, and also please follow up with us. If you want to jump on the podcast, if you feel that you've got something to say, please direct all of that to us and we can have a conversation. If you want to watch our podcast, you can catch us on YouTube under Let's Talk Travel. We'll be back with more from the world of travel very soon, but until then, take care.